It's good to see you all in the chat and joining in with me. So you can't see my face today, but don't worry, I'll be back on camera on next Sunday. All right, so let's get started. Tell me where you're tuning in from. Wherever you are, whether in the US, which states, or the Bahamas, which island, or any other parts of the world, Europe, Africa, and so forth. Welcome. You are all welcome. So here is my little disclaimer for our time together. I'm giving you information, and this is for educational purposes only, which just means that it's going to be up to you to actually implement these skills and these things that you're learning so you can see the results that I believe you can receive, all right? Now, it's kind of bittersweet this session because we literally have one more week together, which is going to be next week, Sunday and Tuesday. So if you haven't already, go to the YouTube channel, like, share, subscribe, and make sure you bring a friend next week, okay? So here's some housekeeping I need to take care of, only because I've been getting questions, getting people kind of coming in asking, what about this and what about that? And so I want to give you guys some insight or some things just to be aware of. So Reteach Learning is a business, is a company of my own where the goal is to empower students, to help them to grow and to develop skills and whatever is necessary so that they can receive the grades that they're looking to receive. They can find support to get to the goals they want to reach academically, or whether they want test prep help and so forth. And that also includes one-on-one or small group tutoring. And so with that being said, if you're interested in booking a session, let's say you have homework help you need, or whatever it is, any learning needs, you can go to reteachlearning.com. It's on the screen in red. And on the website, everything is funneled through the website, okay? So you can get a consultation, and that's for about 10 to 15 minutes. It is complimentary, which means you don't have to pay for it. So some parents or some students wonder, okay, well, what would tutoring look like, or how would you meet my needs? And that's why I want to do a consultation first, which will give me an idea of exactly whether or not we're a good fit, whether or not I can meet your needs, or just to understand what your needs might be so that I can, we can get the ball rolling in the right direction. And then for the session itself, it's between 45 and 60 minutes per session. Some students or some parents desire to go longer, but that is an individual decision to be made, and it's conducted through the platform Zoom. Now, some of you are familiar with Zoom, if not all of you, but I have had sessions in the past where Zoom did not work as well, and so we had to use different platforms like Google Meets or and so forth. So that is also one of the reasons why a consultation is good, because at least we'll know what's working for you and what doesn't, since every student is unique in their needs. I desire or endeavor to meet their individual needs, and so that they can get whatever milestones that they're looking to achieve. And then in terms of preparation, the consultation will determine the student learning plan. So every student is unique, like I said, and everyone has different needs. I do not approach my sessions with each of my students the same way, because they're different and they are individuals. And so that's that. And then if there's any documentation that's going to be transferred between client and tutor, or student and tutor, that's going to all be through email. And then lastly, payments are, if you're international clients, your payments are going to be received through PayPal. And just so for those of you who do not know, PayPal is not just for business owners. You can have a personal PayPal account, and what that allows you to do is to transfer or send money to family members in your local country and also overseas at a lower cost. And also that doesn't take as much time as standing in the line at a bank or in a different facility trying to get your money transferred. So go ahead and check it out. Go on YouTube if you're not sure too much about PayPal, but PayPal is for the regular person like you or me, or for business owners as well, but you do not have to have a business to use PayPal. And then for clients in the US, your payment is received through Zelle, Cash App, and PayPal. And if there's another method that you might know about, like Venmo or e-transfer, Walmart to Walmart, those are platforms I have used in the past. And so in our consultation or conversation, we can explore those options. And so there you go. That's that. So that's my housekeeping for this time. And let's get into what we have to cover today, because there's a lot. All right, so how is this going to go? For those of you who are joining me for the first time, the first thing we're going to do is an opening exercise. And then I'm going to go into reteaching some concepts, 1 to 2 concepts in this video, maybe a few more than 2. But I'm going to look at the time, and wherever I end at about, 45 minutes or an hour, we're going to just pause right there and continue the next few slides another time, which will be on Sunday. Then we're going to do our exam prep tip, and then I'm going to give you some resources, okay? Now, the resources is found at the exact same link as all the other resources. So you can go there and check out any additional worksheets from our sessions or any announcements that are going to be given as well, okay? So our opening exercise, this for me has been exciting because there's different things you can do virtually, and I'm like knocking my head trying to figure out what do I do to kind of engage us while we're in a virtual space. So here it is. And some of you have seen something like this before. Now you can zoom in on your phone if you cannot see it, but how it works is you need to crack this code, okay? So there are little symbols under each line, and every symbol corresponds with a letter from the alphabet, which is going to be the little code is given below, okay? So what you're going to do is you can take a screenshot of this just for a minute because I'm going to change the screen, okay? Now, can you crack the code? If you get it now, like some of you can just look at it and just be like, I know what that is going to be or what that's going to say. But for a key or an idea for some people who have never done this before, if you take a look at the little swirls on the bottom of these 3 lines here, these swirls correspond to the letter E. So in those spaces, you would put an E, okay? So once again, take a screenshot because we're moving on. And what I'm going to do is, instead of showing you the answer now, which I usually would do, I'm going to show you the answer at the end of our session, all right? So what does that mean? That means that if you want to take a break in between, like press the pause button and just do a little bit of a walk around or breath or get some water, you can do that and then maybe work through this on your free time just to get your mind back in gear for the rest of our session. All right, so let's get started. Let's get started. Today we are talking about angles, and specifically we're going to talk about angles on straight lines. We're going to do angles in triangles and angles as it relates to parallel lines. Now that could be a lot and that can be a little overwhelming for some people, but I want you to take a breath and we're going to get through it together one step at a time. All right, so let's talk about straight angles first. Now, if you're having trouble seeing my screen, once again, if you're on the phone, it might be a little bit smaller than you want it to be. You can look at it on the desktop, or you can just simply zoom in your screen on the phone, and that's good. And so, yeah, let's go in. Now, using a protractor. So here we go. Angles on a straight line. The first thing is you want to be able to identify the straight line, okay, which is that black line. And then we use a tool called a protractor, which is a little ruler that's like a semicircle. And this semicircle ruler, which is called a protractor, has a bunch of numbers on it. And these numbers represent angles. Now, if you were to put a little dot in the center of your line and then line up the center of your protractor onto that dot and measure the angle from one side of the line to the other, you would notice that the measurement is going to be 180 degrees. So this is a 180 degree rotation, okay? All right, perfect. So what does that mean? That means that if I have a straight line, the entire rotation or the entire angle is going to be 180 degrees. Now, why do I need to know that? Why is that important? Well, I'll show you why. In your exam, there are questions that look like this. All right, and I'm going to zoom it in a little bit so you can see it. Okay, so let's say you have a question that looks like this. Well, if I can identify the straight line, which is that green line there, and they have given to me an angle that's on this side, and notice what they did. The 180, the entire green line is 180 degrees, but they've kind of cut it into little pieces. And the way they did that was by introducing this little ray right there. Now there's not a arrow at the end, but they introduced that line there. And what you'll notice is that what that line does, it cuts your 180 degree angle into 2 different angles. One side of the angle is given to me as 135 degrees. And usually what they'll do is they'll say, hey, I want you to find this missing piece right here. What would that measurement have to be? So in order to tackle a question like this, if I can identify, or if I notice that I have a straight line and the entire measurement is 180 degrees, so 180 degrees, then what I would need to do to find the missing side, which is over here, is simply to subtract the 135 from 180. And when I do that, I will get 45 degrees. So what does that tell me? What does that mean? Well, that means that this missing angle over on the right-hand side is 45 degrees. And how do I know that answer is correct? Well, because 135 plus 45 is 180, which is the measurement of the straight line that these two angles are sitting on. Okay? Now you can take that in for a little bit. Breathe. Don't get too overwhelmed. And then we'll keep going, okay? All right, let's look at the next one. Here's an example from an actual exam paper, specifically the 2019 BJC Paper 2, question 3. And it says, find the measure of the missing angle. And notice that it says not drawn to scale. And the truth is, most, if not all of your, most of them, of your like diagrams in terms of angles and different shapes on your paper will have not drawn to scale on it. What does that mean? Well, what that means is they don't want you to just look at it and be like, oh, that looks like a 50-degree angle, and then put it down there as the answer. They're saying, no, don't look at it and guess the answer. They want you to calculate the actual answer. So how do we do that? Well, we do the same thing we did before. First of all, I'm going to identify my straight line that's shared. Okay, so we have a straight line here. So what I know about the straight line is that that entire angle has to add up or become 180. Well, if they tell you that one piece of it, which is over here, is 120, then what angle must angle B measure so that the sum, or they add up to give me 180 degrees? Well, the way I will do that is I will get 180 and subtract 120, and I'll be left with 60 degrees. So angle B is equal to 60 degrees. Why? Because 60 plus 120 gives me 180. All right, so let's keep going. Here's another example. Angles on a straight line, once again, not drawn to scale. All right, so let's take a look. Can I identify a straight line? Well, there's a lot of them, right? So let's maybe just choose one that we want to deal with. So let's say I chose this green line here, and I'm going to zoom in again for you, make it a little closer. Okay, so I have this line here, and what I know is that the angle on this line, 35 degrees, and the B, the angle labeled B, that sum has to be 180 degrees. So what do I do to find angle B? Well, I have 180 minus 135, and that's going to give me angle B. And that is 45 degrees. All right, so this is angle B. Now, let's go ahead and just put that in for a second. Let's say I just put the 45 in there, because I know what it is. Well, I can look at another line. Let's say I use this line here. It's a straight line, right? So that means that angle C plus the 135 degree angle has to be 180 degrees. So what would I do there for angle C? Well, angle C, I can subtract 135 again, 135 from 180, and I will also get another 45 degrees. Okay, And so I'm going to put the 45 in there also, so 45. And then lastly, how would I find angle D? Well, angle D is on a straight line as well, but it's on the straight line with angle C. And so what I know is that the 45 degree angle, which is angle C, plus D should give me 180 degrees. And so in order to find angle D, I am going to subtract 45 from 180, and that's going to give me 135. Now, is there another way to do a question that looks like this? The answer is yes, because this introduces for us another type of angle. Now, you can look for angles on a straight line, yes, but notice that the angle 135 here is the same measurement on that side, and the 45 degrees is the same measurement on this side. And why is that the case? Well, when two lines cross, we have a special kind of angle that's formed. So let's talk about it. Vertical angles, here we go. It's also called vertically opposite angles. Now, notice that when we did the calculations, the 135 was here, 135, and then we had 45 and 45. Now, of course, the 135 and 45 are just examples of measurements, but It just so happens that vertical angles, one, if you're talking about the definition, they are formed when two lines cross. So we have one line here and one line here that are crossing. And when they cross, the opposite angles, which in this case, the 135 angles, they are congruent. And that's a word you probably have heard before, but congruent just means that they are equal in size. They are the same size. Now, specifically, they are opposite and non-adjacent. And those are the ones that are congruent. So what do I mean? Notice that the 135 angles, they're opposite one another, but they're not next to each other. So for example, the 35-degree and the 45-degree, they're right next to each other because they share a common side. But if we take a look at the two 35-degree angles, we have these two sides forming the bottom 135-degree angle, and these two sides forming the top 135-degree angle. So that's what we mean by non-adjacent. And specifically when we talk about opposite, they're just on opposite sides of those lines. And so these are called vertical angles, or vertically opposite angles is another name you'll find maybe on an exam to represent these angles. And what is important about them is that if you can identify these angles, they are congruent. So A and D are congruent, and C and B are congruent, and they are vertically opposite pairs, all right? So let's take a look at what this would look like as a question on your exam. Here we go. It says, find the measurement of each missing angle. Oh, okay. Well, I see that two lines are crossing, which is amazing, because we know that when two lines cross, then that's when vertical angles are formed. So let's zoom in a little bit so you can see. All right. So the 127-degree angle is vertically opposite to angle D. So that means that angle D is equal to 127. Now notice I didn't have to do any calculation in order to find that answer. I just simply used my understanding of vertical angles, and that's the beauty of being able to identify these different types of angles, because it saves you time on an exam. And so similarly, the 53-degree angle is vertically opposite angle C. So if they're vertical angles or vertically opposite angles, then angle C is equal to 53 degrees. All right, so there we go. That is your example of, or an example that you would see pop up on your exam about vertical angles. Now let's see if another example that may appear, okay? So here it is. It says, find the measure of each missing angle. Here we go. Now, let's see. Do we see lines crossing? Well, we do. We see some lines crossing right here. And we see another pair of lines crossing over here. Okay. Now, if I look at the angle X, what you'll note is that angle X is vertically opposite to the 50-degree angle. And so angle X is 50 degrees. Isn't that amazing? No calculations whatsoever. But now let's take a look at angle Y, which is over here. If you take a look at angle Y is a vertically opposite angle, but it's vertically opposite to this angle here on the left side. Now, if you take a look at that, we don't have the measurement for it, but we can certainly find it. Now, how can we find it? Well, let's take a look at another rule, and that's going to help us to find that missing angle. All right, so here we go. Let's introduce triangles, because what you'll notice is that the angle that's missing, which is right here, I'm going to put a little question mark, it is inside a larger triangle. So if I move some of these lines, some of these colors and all that stuff going on, this is a large triangle. I'm going to color it in blue. Okay, so how do I find a missing angle within a triangle when I'm given maybe one or two of the other sides, okay? Other angles, I'm saying sides, other angles. Well, let's take a look. First of all, there's a need to distinguish between the sides and the angles of a triangle, all right? So the angles are like the elbows or the corners of the triangle. And then the sides are like the walls or the things that make up our angles, okay? Or the rays that make up our angles. Now, why is that important? Well, that's important because some questions, oftentimes, students get confused between whether the numbers in the question are referring to the sides or if they're referring to the angles. So one of the key indicators that the number in a question that's involving a triangle is talking about the angle is if you see the number, so let's say 40, and you see a degree symbol, which is up here. Okay, you see a little, you see a little dot or circle, okay? That is an indicator that we're talking about angles and not sides. Now, if we're talking about sides, what you'll see is units like centimeters or inches or whatever, or maybe you won't see any units at all. But specifically when we're dealing with angles, I want you to take a look and find the degree symbol, and that's going to help you to figure out what number, what they're representing if you're unsure. For the most part, it is straightforward when you see it on a paper, but if it's not, you can always look for that indicator, the degree, to tell that to indicate that you're talking about the angle. Or you can raise your hand and say, hey teacher, a little bit confused here. Which number, what is this number referring to, the angle or the side? And the reason that's important is because certain formulas, certain approaches to these questions require you to use certain information. And if you're using information for sides when you should be using information for angles or vice versa, then you will find that you will not get to the correct solution, all right? So let's keep going. Now, in order to solve for a missing angle, when you have a triangle, and let's say in that triangle you've been given two of the other sides, well, I keep saying sides, two of the other angles, well, we have this thing called the angle sum theorem, right? Maybe it goes from an angle addition, but it might go by a different name. But the point is this: every triangle, one of the reasons why it's called a triangle is one, it has three sides and it has three angles. And every triangle, if I were to add each angle in that triangle, the sum will always be 180 degrees. What does that mean? Well, it means that it doesn't matter what the triangle looks like. If it's a triangle and I add all of the angles of my triangle, it will be 180 degrees. Now, why is that important and how would I use that? Well, let's take a look at an example here. All right. Let's say that you're given this particular question and they said, I want you to find the missing angle A that's sitting right here. Okay. Well, how would I do that? Well, what I just noted here is that all of the angles, when I add them, their sum is 180. So in other words, I'll be angle X plus angle Y plus angle Z is going to give me 180 degrees. All right. So now let's fill in the information for all of the angles they did give us in the question. Well, they gave us angle X is 54. Angle Y is 43. We do not know angle Z, but I'm just going to use an A in that position since we're talking about angle A. And then that should be equal to 180 degrees. Now you might be wondering, why did I put angle Z when they were talking about A? Well, because these are the big numbers on the outside. All right. So that's why I put X, Y, Z. But with that being said, now we have an equation. And in our previous sessions, we talked about solving for equations or solving equations, okay? So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to simplify the left-hand side. And we're going to do that by combining like terms. So 54 plus 43, that's going to give us 97 plus A, and that's equal to 180 degrees. All right. Last step is we want to get the A on its own. And so in order to do that, we're going to get rid of the positive 97 by subtracting 97 on both sides. So 180 minus 97 is going to give us 83. So A is equal to 83 degrees. And this is how we would use this information when we have a triangle and they have given us two of the sides. All right. So what does that mean? Well, if I go back to the question we started off with, which is here. So now remember, X was 50 because it's a vertically opposite angle. But we also mentioned that Y is a vertically opposite angle with this angle here that we don't know. But now we can figure it out. And how can we figure it out? Well, we have a triangle here. All right. And with the triangle, we have two sides. We know that all of the angles in this triangle have to add to 180 degrees. So that means that 50 plus 95 plus, let's say I chose to name this angle Z, that should be equal to 180 degrees. All right, so now let's go ahead and figure out what Z is. Well, 95 plus 50 is going to give us 145 plus Z, and that's equal to 180. And I want the Z to be on its own, so I'm going to subtract 145, and the reason I'm doing that is because it's a positive 145, or I'm adding it, so minus 145, 145. And so Z is equal to 35 degrees. Now notice that this angle in here, Z, this is 35, is vertically opposite to Y. So that also means that Y is equal to 35 degrees. All right, you can watch that again if it's a little bit confusing, but there you go. There you go. That's how I would deal with a question like this. Let's take a look at another one, okay, shall we? Here they want us to find the measurement of, let me zoom out a little bit, of these two angles. All right, so let's see, what do we have? Well, there's a couple of things we can probably see. One, you can tell that this angle 50 here and Y, these are vertically opposite angles. So that means that Y would be 50 degrees. Okay, that's the first thing you can note. The second thing you might also notice, and you can try this on your own, is that we have some straight lines here. We have a straight line right there, and so that means that the 50 and the Z, if I were to add them, they have to be 180 degrees. So in order to find angle Z, I have to subtract 50 from 180. Okay? Now, 180 minus 50 is 130. So that means that Z is 130 degrees, and that's pretty awesome. Now, we're kind of integrating everything we did in the last few slides there, but there you go. And then lastly, if I want to find X, notice that X is inside a triangle. And we know the measurement of two of the sides. And so we need to figure out what's the third side. I keep saying sides, but I mean angles. What's the measurement of the third angle? Well, 67. So for X, I would have to add 67 and 50 and subtract that answer from 180. So 67 plus 50, and then that's 117, and 180 minus 117 is 63. All right, so there you go. So that is our process for solving for these angles, okay? Now, let's take a look at what comes next, all right? So now, we just figure out, okay, how do I solve the angles if I have, a straight line, or if I have vertically opposite angles, or if I have angles in a triangle. But then there's also more to it, because what you'll also notice is that you have triangles where it has little markings on it. So these are little markings here, right? And sometimes people are like, what do they even mean? I'm not sure. Well, let's go ahead and talk about it. Whenever you see similar markings on any geometric figure, specifically in the case of triangles here, but what it's telling you is that they are congruent. So what do I mean? Well, I have similar markings on the right side and the left side of this top triangle. So what they're telling me is that if one side is 5 centimeters, this other side is also 5. Whatever the measurement is for one, it's the measurement on the other, because they have the exact same markings. This also stands for the angles. So this angle here, if this angle was 35, notice that it has the same markings as this angle over here. So that will also be 35 as well, 35 degrees specifically. All right, so if you have similar markings, that means that those are congruent. If you take a look at the bottom left triangle, we see that all of the angles have the same green, just a single green arc. And so that's going to tell us that those are all congruent. And then all of its sides has this single orange dash which is also going to tell us that they are all congruent. Now, based on how many sides or how many angles are congruent within a triangle, that also gives us an idea of what this triangle is going to be called. But we're not going to go into that too much. We're just going to become familiar with the markings and what they're telling us. And the other important one is the box. If you see a box inside a triangle or any geometric shape, that's telling you that that angle is 90 degrees. They're just not going to tell you that. It's going to be a box, okay? So why do we need to know this? Well, let's take a look at an example. And this one comes from your exam paper, all right? So we have 57 and A. And then we see that's this little box here. Well, the box is telling us that this entire angle, the entire thing, all of that has to be 90 degrees, okay? But what they show you is that a portion of it is 57. So what would this portion labeled A have to be if the total has to be 90? Well, what I would do is I know that 57 plus A is going to be equal to 90 degrees. And this is the longer way, but it's just so you can see it. If I subtract 57 from both sides, so 90 minus 57, then A is equal to 33 degrees, okay? And so that's how you would solve a problem like this if you see a box and they gave you the measurement of one of the angles, all right? Let's keep going. Here's another one, okay? And it has a marking. It has two markings. It has a bunch of markings, really. It has markings here and it has markings here. And remember, wherever you see similar markings, it just means that they are congruent. So let's look at the question. It says the sides of a triangle are x centimeters, 2x centimeters, and x plus 1 centimeters. State the length of AC. Now I'm just stating the length of AC. Now AC, which is this side here, has the same markings as AB. So what does that mean? That means if I'm going to state the length of AC, AC is going to be x centimeters. It's not a number because we don't know what x is yet. It's just simply x centimeters for now. And that's how I would answer this question. And then it says the perimeter of a triangle is 32 centimeters. Form an equation for the perimeter of the triangle. Now, here's some information. It says the perimeter. What do we mean when we talk about perimeter? Well, perimeter is all about the distance around. So let's look at the distance around this triangle. We know that AC is x centimeters, all right? So if I'm going all the way around, let's say I start at A and I went to B. What distance would I have to travel to go from A to B? Well, they said I have to travel x centimeters. So that means that AB is x centimeters. And when we talk about perimeter, we're talking about the whole distance, the sum of the distance or the distance around. So we're going to add every distance together to figure out the perimeter. I would also go from B to C, not just A to B, but B to C as well. And the distance B to C is x plus 5. So plus x plus 5, that's the distance BC. And then the last leg is from C to A. All right, get back to A. So I have to add to that C to A, which is going to give me x centimeters. Now notice they said this perimeter, so this is the perimeter here, and it says it is, and in math, is represents an equal sign, so equals 32 centimeters. And so this is the equation that you would use to figure out your perimeter. Now we also have like terms. So let's simplify this a little bit. We have x's here, and we have 3 of them. So we have 3x plus 5 is equal to 32. All right. So with that being said, we are going to go to the next question. All right. So this is the formula. This is the equation that we're dealing with. 3x plus 5 equals to 32. I'm going to write that equation here. 3x plus 5 is equal to 32. And the reason I'm doing that is because they asked us to solve it, solve that equation. So let's go ahead and solve it for x. The first thing we're going to do is I'm going to zoom through this part because we've kind of went over equations already. And so if you're not sure, you want to go back and watch our session on equations. So 32 minus 5 is going to give us 27. So 3x is equal to 27. And then 27 divided by 3 x is equal to 9. All right, good. Now it says state the length of AB. Well, AB is x centimeters, so that's going to be 9 centimeters. And AC is the same distance as AB, so that's also going to be 9 centimeters. All right, good. So that's how you would solve a problem that looks like this on an examination. If you need a minute, you can take a breath, take a break, and come back, okay? All right, let's keep going. Let's keep going. Okay, here's another example, and you can try this one on your own and then keep the video playing, okay? But let's see. It says we have a triangle, and it says that the sides are x centimeters, 2x centimeters, and 1x plus 1 centimeters. The perimeter of the triangle is 49 centimeters. Form an equation to represent this information. All right, so it's very similar to the one we just did. So let's do an equation. So with a perimeter, now mind you, sometimes they might say area, and area is different. Perimeter specifically is I'm adding the distances all the way around my triangle. So from A to B, I get x, plus from B to C, I get 2x, plus from C to A, I get x plus 1. And that is equal to 49 centimeters. Okay? Perimeter, once again, we're going from every one point to the next until we get back to where we started. All right, now, before I move from this question, I need to combine any like terms needing to be combined, all right? So here we go. We have 4x's, so that's 4x plus 1 is equal to 49. All right, good. Now they want us to solve this equation, which is pretty cool. So let's go ahead and solve it using our algebra skills. So we're going to subtract 1 first. And so we get 4x is equal to 48. Awesome. And then the last thing is we're going to divide both sides by 4. And so x is equal to 14. Now the last part says state the length of each side. So AB is represented by x, and so that's going to be 14 centimeters or whatever unit they want us to use. From B to C is represented by 2x, which means 2 times x, so 2 times 14, which is 28. And then from C to A is represented by x plus 1. So that's the same as 14 plus 1, which is 15. All right? And so these are our final answers. There you go. Okay? Now, what does that mean? Well, we just finished straight lines, angles on straight lines. We just finished triangles, which is really good. And now we're going to tackle a little bit of parallel lines, okay? So before we do, because I don't want to get cut off, I probably will because my laptop is on low and I don't have, I have some crazy stuff going on right now. So let me skip down a little bit and I'm going to talk about our open activity. We're going to talk about our study tip and then we'll go back to parallel lines if we don't cut off, okay? Now, let's see. Did you crack the code? Did you crack it? Well, here it goes. It says you're awesome because you absolutely are. Okay, you're absolutely awesome. And thank you for sticking with me this far because we only have 2 more sessions left. And so we're going to really tackle some of the topics that take a lot of the marks on these BJC, BGCSE exams. And so you want to tune in, you want to make sure that you are ready and you're focused when it's time to sit together. And let's remember some of the tips we got when it comes to studying and preparing for examinations. On our first time together, we said we want to break up our study time into short times. So for example, if you want to study for an hour, you can break it down into 2 30-minute sessions or 3 20-minute sessions. That's absolutely possible. You want to set some study goals. Don't forget to take breaks as well if you're going to break up your study session. You want to make or take clear, ample notes. So when I say clear notes, make sure you can understand it clearly. And ample means sometimes we take notes, but we don't take enough to understand what we are studying when we go back. So you need to take as much notes as possible so that when you go back to study, you have enough information to help you through the assignment or to help you to prepare for your exam. Create a study area, something where it's an area that's quiet, study an area where there's less distractions. And then you can use flashcards. Those are helpful. So what's our tip here for our session today? It says practice using past test exams, okay? So tests or exams. So what does that mean? You can get a compilation of past tests that have been done and then practice them. What I used to do is I would create an environment where I would literally sit for maybe 30 minutes and I would do as many questions as I can. And then I would sit with a teacher and they would grade my paper and tell me if I'm right. Or I would just look at the answer sheet and then I would see, okay, I didn't get this one right, or I didn't get this one right, or I got that one right. And that gave me information to know, okay, what do I know and what do I not know? And I could focus on those things that I knew that I did not know so I can make sure I was good, okay? And I want to encourage you to do the same thing, all right? So I'm going to lose battery, so I'm going to end early, but I'm going to upload a longer version, a completed version of this session as well, so that you have it and all of the content that includes parallel lines. So I will see you on Sunday, okay? Have a good one. Bye.